The hall of the council was silent. Tall alien statues watched from the shadows, their stone faces cold, their eyes unblinking. In the center stood a young alien woman. Her name was Sira. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from anger she could not hide. All around her, thousands of eyes stared with judgment. The leaders of her own people sat high above, their voices sharp and cold. They were not here to listen. They were here to condemn. Sira of the seventh moon, the elder's voice echoed. You are accused of betrayal. You warned of an enemy fleet that never came. Because of your lies, our people wasted ships, wasted lives, and wasted trust. For this crime you will be punished, Sira wanted to shout. She wanted to scream that she had told the truth, that the enemy had been there, hiding in the void. She had seen it. She had risked her life to warn them. But no one wanted to believe. Her closest friends had abandoned her. The warriors who once fought beside her now looked away in silence. Even her own family sat with their heads lowered, ashamed to be linked with her name. She was alone, completely alone. The council chamber whispered with cruel words, traitor, liar, disgrace. The voices cut deeper than any blade, and yet Sira stood tall. If this was to be her end, she would not bow. Her heart burned with one thought: I was right. And one day they will see it, but she never expected what would happen next. From the far side of the chamber, heavy boots struck the floor. A human soldier stepped forward. His armor was scratched, dented, marked by countless battles. His name was Captain Hayes. His presence was like a storm in a room that had forgotten the wind. The aliens hissed in anger. Humans were outsiders, tolerated but never respected. They were seen as young, reckless, unworthy of the great galactic council. And yet this man walked with no fear. He stopped beside Sira, his gaze steady, his jaw set. Then he spoke, his voice low but firm. You are wrong, Hayes said. She is no traitor. The chamber exploded in shock. Voices rose like thunder. How dare a human speak here? How dare he defend her? The elder struck the floor with his staff. Silence. His eyes narrowed at Hayes. You risk much by speaking, human. Why defend her? Hayes did not look at the elder. He looked at Sira, the woman who stood abandoned by all. His answer was simple: because she was right. And because I owe her my life. Gasps filled the chamber. The council was furious. The other aliens shook their heads in disbelief. A human soldier defending an accused traitor. Impossible. Madness. But Hayes did not stop. He told them how his crew had once been caught in an ambush, and how Sira had warned them just in time. He told them how she had fought, unarmed, against overwhelming enemies to save lives. Not human lives, not alien lives, but all lives. The council refused to listen. They whispered to each other, their faces filled with anger and pride. To them, this was not about truth. This was about power, about control. Sira's heart pounded. For the first time in many long days, someone had stood beside her. Someone had spoken for her when no one else dared. A human of all beings, the ones her people often mocked as reckless, emotional, and weak. Yet this human was the only one brave enough to defy the council. The elder's voice cut through the noise. Enough. The decision is made. The woman is guilty. She will be executed at dawn. And as for you, human, return to your people before we strip you of your rank and your life. The chamber erupted in approval. Cold, merciless voices cheered her downfall, but Hayes did not move. His eyes locked with Sira's, and in that silent moment she understood. He was not going to leave. He was not going to let them take her. He was planning something dangerous. The guards stepped closer, their weapons raised. Sira felt the weight of doom closing around her, and yet for the first time, a spark of hope lit within her chest. Everyone had turned their backs on her, everyone, except him, and that small spark of hope was about to change everything. The night before her execution was long and cold. Sira sat in a dark cell, the walls damp with moisture, the air heavy with silence. No one came to see her. No one came to speak for her. It was as if the world had already erased her name. Her people had once celebrated her. She had been a young officer, brave and loyal. She had trained beside the finest warriors of her planet, her spirit burning brighter than most. Her teachers had praised her. Her commanders had trusted her, and then everything had shattered. It began with whispers, a shadow in deep space, strange movements beyond the stars. She was the first to see it, an enemy fleet hiding in the void. Their warships moved like ghosts, watching, waiting. Sira had sounded the alarm. She had begged the council to prepare defenses, but the council laughed. Her warning was dismissed as fear, or worse, as a lie. "I see enemies where there are none," they told her. Her own comrades shook their heads. Even her family, the ones who should have believed her without question, asked her to stay quiet. But Sira did not stay quiet. She pushed harder. She spoke louder. She risked her position, her honor, everything, because she knew the threat was real. Then the attack came. But not where the council expected. The enemy struck a distant colony, small, unimportant to the leaders, but home to thousands of innocent lives. By the time her people responded, it was too late. The colony burned. Thousands died, and the council, desperate to hide their shame, turned all blame toward her. They said her warning had been a trick. They said she had misled them. They said she had caused the deaths. That night the people whispered her name with disgust. Her friends avoided her eyes. Her family locked their doors. The woman who had tried to save them was now marked as a traitor. And yet, there was one moment that kept her alive, one memory that refused to fade. During the chaos of that colony attack, when the skies were on fire and ships fell burning into the sea, Sira had not run. She had fought. She had guided terrified families through collapsing streets. She had faced enemy soldiers with nothing but her bare hands. And in that fire she had met them, humans, a group of human soldiers outnumbered and cut off from their fleet. Among them was a man with steady eyes and a voice that carried calm even in the storm, Captain Hayes. They had fought side by side. Sira remembered the moment clearly. Hayes pinned down, enemy weapons closing in. She had leapt into the line of fire, pulling him clear just as an explosion tore the ground apart. Her arms had bled, her body had burned, but the human had survived. Later, when the enemy retreated, Hayes had looked at her with something she had never seen before. Not suspicion, not judgment, but respect. "Why did you save me?" he had asked. And she had answered simply, "Because it was the right thing to do." That was the bond between them. That was the truth the council refused to see. Now, sitting in the darkness of her cell, Sira closed her eyes. She could still hear the voices outside calling her a traitor. She could still feel the cold betrayal of her own people. But beneath it all, she remembered the look in Hayes's eyes when he stood for her in the council chamber. The same look he had given her that day on the burning colony. No one believed her. No one trusted her, except him. And for the first time in weeks, she felt something stir in her heart. Not hope, not yet, but the memory of what courage looked like. Because if a human, the outsider of the galaxy, could risk everything for her, then maybe, just maybe, her story was not over yet. The night dragged on. Guards watched her from the shadows. The stars outside were cold and distant. And yet in the silence, Sira whispered to herself, "They can turn their backs, but I will not break." Far away, beyond the walls of her cell, Hayes was already moving. He was already planning. And though she did not yet know it, the lonely outcast was about to become part of something far greater than herself, something that could change the fate of the galaxy. The council chamber was awake again the next morning. Bright light poured down from the high ceiling, making the hall feel colder than before. The crowd of aliens had gathered, waiting to see Sira's final judgment carried out. Whispers filled the air like poison, some mocking, some eager to watch her fall. At the center of it all, Sira stood once more, chains tight around her wrists. Her face was calm, but inside her heart thundered. She already knew what the verdict would be. Her people wanted her gone. They wanted a scapegoat, not the truth. And then Captain Hayes stepped forward. The sound of his boots echoed across the chamber. Every step was heavy, deliberate, unafraid. He wore no helmet, no mask to hide behind, only his scarred armor and the fire in his eyes. The alien guards shifted uneasily. The council elders leaned forward, frowning at his defiance. To them, humans were still newcomers, children of the stars, too reckless to be trusted with power. And yet this one stood without hesitation, his voice rising above the chamber. "She is not guilty," Hayes declared. His voice cut through the hall like steel. "She warned you. She saved lives. She stood when no one else would. And now you call her a traitor?" The aliens hissed and muttered, outraged at his boldness. The elder struck the floor with his staff. "Human, you overstep. This is not your council. You have no place in our judgment." But Hayes did not step back. His eyes stayed locked on the elder, steady and unblinking. "You're right," he said. "This is not my counsel. But truth does not belong to councils. Truth belongs to those brave enough to speak it." Gasps spread across the crowd. No one had ever dared speak to the elders like this, certainly not a human. Hayes continued, his voice growing stronger. "My crew was there. We saw what happened. She warned us when no one else did. She saved our ship and she saved me. Without her, I would not be standing here. Without her, many of us would already be dead." Sierra's chest tightened. She wanted to look at him, to thank him, but she kept her head high. "If she showed weakness, the council would only use it against her," the elder sneered. "And why, human, should your word matter here? You are nothing in this chamber. You are guests in this galaxy, barely out of your cradle. Why should we trust your voice over our own?" The hall rumbled with agreement. But Hayes did not falter. He took one step closer, his presence unshaken. "Because I was there," he said simply. "Because I saw her fight when the rest of you turned away. Because she did what none of you would. She risked herself for others, without hesitation, without reward. Isn't that what true honor means?" The silence that followed was sharp, cutting through the noise of the crowd. For a brief moment, even the council seemed unsure. But pride is a heavy chain, and the elders were too bound to it. The elders' staff struck the floor again. "Enough! We will not be lectured by a human. The decision is final. She is guilty and the sentence will be carried out." The crowd roared in approval. Cold faces, unforgiving eyes. They had already chosen their truth, no matter the cost. But Hayes did not move. His jaw clenched, his fists tight. He knew words alone would not save her. If he stayed silent now, she would die. If he obeyed the council, the truth would be buried forever. And so, in that moment, Captain Hayes made his choice. He stepped closer to Sierra, placing himself between her and the guards. "If you want her life," he said, his voice low and sharp, "then you'll have to take mine as well." The entire chamber froze. The words hung heavy in the air, impossible to ignore. A human soldier, defying the most powerful council in the galaxy. For an alien woman they had all abandoned. The guards raised their weapons. The elders shouted in fury. The crowd erupted in chaos, but Sierra felt her heart shift. For the first time in her life, someone had stood not just beside her, but against the entire world for her. And in that defiance, she saw something her people had forgotten long ago. She saw courage. She saw humanity. The chamber was no longer just a trial. It had become a battlefield of wills, and Hayes had just declared war with nothing but his voice. The decision was final. The council's voices rang like hammers against stone. "Sierra of the Seventh Moon is guilty." Execution at dawn. Chains clinked around her wrists. Guards moved forward, their heavy armor scraping the floor. The crowd of aliens cheered, hungry to see her punished. But one man did not move with them. Captain Hayes stood tall, his body between Sierra and the council. His jaw was tight, his eyes burning. The elder pointed his staff. "Stand down, human, or share her fate." For a long, heavy moment, the entire chamber waited. Hayes did not step back. Instead, his hand reached slowly to his belt, and then the lights went out. The chamber plunged into darkness. Gasps filled the air. Guards shouted orders, their weapons sparking with power. But Hayes was already moving. With one sharp pull, he ripped the chains from Sierra's wrists. "Move!" he whispered. She stumbled at first, stunned by his sudden grip. But then her instincts took over. Her feet followed him, her heart pounding like drums. The guards fired blindly, beams of light flashing through the shadows. Hayes pulled her behind a pillar, the energy bolts exploding against stone. He returned fire, quick and precise. 2 guards fell. Others shouted, rushing in. Sierra's eyes adjusted to the dark. She could barely breathe. Every sound felt sharp, every second too loud. She had lived as a soldier before, but this was different. Now she was the target. This way. Hayes pulled her through a side passage, half hidden in the wall. The crowd screamed as they disappeared, but most were too afraid to follow. Down twisting corridors they ran. The alarms blared now, red lights flashing to life. The entire council building shook with chaos. Guards chased them, shouting orders in the alien tongue. Sierra gasped between breaths. Why are you doing this? You'll lose everything." Hayes didn't slow. I already lost everything once, he said. Not this time. They crashed through a security door, alarms screaming louder. Behind them, footsteps thundered closer. Ahead, a long bridge stretched across an open void, connecting the council spire to the outer docks. Sira froze. The bridge was exposed, no cover, no shadows. The guards would cut them down before they reached the other side. Hayes checked his weapon. Only a few shots left. He looked at her, then at the bridge. "Run," he said. Before she could answer, he stepped into the open, firing shot after shot, drawing the guards' attention. Energy bolts filled the air, slamming into the walls, exploding in sparks. Sira's chest tightened. Every instinct screamed at her to move, but her legs refused. "Go," Hayes shouted. And then she ran. Her feet pounded across the bridge, every step echoing in the vast chamber. Beams of light tore past her, searing the air. Behind her, Hayes fought like a wall of iron, taking hits, firing back, refusing to fall. Halfway across, she turned, shouting, "Hayes!" He was bleeding. Smoke rose from his armor, but his eyes still burned. "Don't stop!" he roared. Her throat ached, but she obeyed. She ran harder, reaching the far side of the bridge, her lungs on fire. Hayes staggered after her, his steps heavy, but he did not fall. Together they crashed through the final door, locking it behind them. For a brief moment, silence. Only the sound of their breath. Sira leaned against the wall, her hands shaking. Her people had abandoned her. Her world had turned its back. But this one human had just defied the most powerful council in the galaxy for her. She looked at him, his armor scorched, his face cut, his body trembling with exhaustion. "Why?" she whispered again. Hayes met her eyes. "Because you were right," he said. "And because no one deserves to die alone." The alarms grew louder, closer. The council would not stop. The galaxy itself would hunt them now. But in that dark corridor, for the first time since her betrayal, Sira felt something stronger than fear. She felt hope, and as they fled into the unknown, she knew this was only the beginning. The corridor outside the council spire was silent now. For a moment it felt like they had escaped everything. Guards, alarms, the council's judgment. Sira leaned against the wall, her chest heaving, her mind racing. The human beside her, Captain Hayes, examined a small holographic device, his fingers moving fast. "They're planning something," he said quietly. Sira frowned. "Who?" "The fleet," Hayes replied, his voice grim. "The same fleet I warned you about. The one you saw first." Sira's stomach tightened. She had thought the attack had been contained. She had thought the council's ignorance was their biggest problem. But now she realized it was far worse. "They're still out there?" she whispered. Hayes nodded. "Waiting, watching, preparing for a strike no one expects. If they hit, it won't just be a colony this time. It could be every world in this sector. Thousands, maybe millions could die." Sira felt a chill. Her warnings had been ignored once. She could not let that happen again. "We have to warn them," she said. Hayes shook his head. "They won't listen. Not the council, not your people, not the human fleets. They all think I'm exaggerating. Or that you're guilty. We are alone in knowing the truth." Alone, the word echoed in her mind. Her friends, her family, her commanders, everyone had turned their backs. And now, even in the face of total destruction, she would have to fight alone. But she looked at Hayes, and she realized she was not completely alone. Together, they moved through the narrow corridors of the hidden docks. Ships hovered silently in the shadows, waiting for the next step. Hayes led Sira to a small craft, barely large enough for two. Its engines hummed quietly, ready for a sudden escape. Sira climbed aboard, her mind racing with plans and fears. "The council will hunt us," she said. "They'll call it treason. They'll send fleets after us." Hayes nodded, adjusting the controls. "Let them come. We have something they don't." "And what is that?" she asked. "Truth," he replied. "And courage." The ship lifted off quietly, slipping through the shadows of the council spire. Below, the city was alive with movement, guards, drones, alarms. But above them, in the vast emptiness of space, they were free. For now. But freedom felt fragile. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and the enemy waited in the dark. Sira stared at the stars ahead. She had survived betrayal, execution, and the judgment of her own people. She had faced fear alone. Until now. Hayes reached over and placed a hand on the controls. "You were right," he said quietly. "The enemy is coming. And only we know it. We have to act fast or everything is lost. Sira clenched her fists. She felt a spark ignite deep inside her, a mix of fear and determination. They were outnumbered, outgunned, ignored, but they were not defeated. As the stars streaked past their ship, Sira looked at Hayes and whispered, "Then let's make them listen." Hayes nodded. In the distance, a fleet shimmered like a shadow on the edge of space. It was the enemy, and it was coming. The galaxy would soon see that the lonely outcast and the human who risked it all were not so powerless after all. And as the two prepared for what lay ahead, Sira realized the truth she had always known. Courage was not about being popular. It was not about being believed. It was about standing up, even when the universe turned its back on you. And they were about to stand together against the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. The enemy fleet hung in the darkness ahead, silent, massive, waiting for the right moment to strike. Sira gripped the controls of their small ship, her hands shaking slightly but her eyes sharp. Beside her, Captain Hayes checked the weapons systems. His armor was battered, his face scarred, but his resolve was unbroken. "This is it," Sira said softly. Hayes nodded. "Everything depends on us. If we fail, the galaxy dies." Sira thought of her people, the ones who had turned their backs on her, the council that had condemned her. For a moment doubt crept in, but then she remembered Hayes, the human who had risked everything for her. She was not alone. With a deep breath they pushed forward. Their ship darted between the massive warships of the enemy, weaving through the shadows, striking swiftly where the enemy least expected. Blasts of energy tore through the void. Explosions shook the smaller craft, but Hayes and Sira moved as one. Every decision, every maneuver counted. Every second could be their last. The enemy fired relentlessly, but Hayes shouted instructions, his voice calm and commanding. Sira followed without hesitation, trusting him completely. "We can do this." Hayes yelled over the roar of the battle. "You saved me once. Now let's save them all." Sira's heart surged. She remembered the countless times she had been abandoned, dismissed, blamed for things she had not done. Now she had the chance to prove everything, to prove her courage, her truth, her worth. They hit the enemy's command ship with precise strikes, avoiding traps, dodging missiles. Sira's hands moved swiftly over the controls. Hayes fired the weapons, one shot after another, taking down the enemy defenses with deadly accuracy. Finally, the largest warship of the enemy fleet trembled. Its shields flickered. Sira aimed one last time. "Now!" Hayes shouted. She fired. The explosion lit up the void like a star being born. The enemy flagship broke apart, scattering its fleet in chaos. The remaining ships fled, retreating into the darkness, defeated. Sira sank back in her seat, breathing heavily. Hayes turned to her, a rare smile breaking through his battle-hardened face. "You did it," he said simply. "No, we did it," Sira corrected, smiling back. Far below, the council of her people received the news. The alien leaders were silent, their pride shattered. The traitor, the woman they had condemned? She had saved the galaxy. Sira stepped out of the ship, standing tall before Hayes. The stars stretched endlessly around them, but she no longer felt small. She had faced betrayal, danger, and doubt, and she had survived. Not alone, but with someone who had believed in her when no one else would. Hayes looked at her, his expression serious. "You were right all along. You risked everything to tell the truth, and the galaxy owes you for it." Sira nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. "Sometimes," she said, "all it takes is one person willing to risk everything for another. That is courage. That is humanity." Hayes smiled, a soft, proud smile. "And sometimes," he said, "it takes one human to remind everyone else what courage looks like." The stars sparkled around them, endless and bright. The galaxy was safe for now. And Sira knew no matter what came next, she would never be alone again, because everyone had turned their backs on her. Except the human who risked it all.